All right, the time is now 6 o'clock. I'll call our meeting to order. Roll call has been taken. We'll go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, now we'll move on to item 3, which is to review, revise, and approve tonight's agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as written? Moved by Vice Chair Walker Andrews, seconded by Trustee Mercer. Any public comment on this agenda item? All trustees in favor for approving the agenda as written, please raise your hand for yes. Unanimous to all trustees present. So now we'll move on to item 4, which is to approve the board minutes of the regular meeting on June 11, 2024. Is there a motion to approve those minutes? Moved by Trustee Witcher. Is there a second? Second by Trustee Mercer. Any public comment on this agenda item? All those in favor for approving the minutes of the regular board meeting, please raise your hand to indicate yes. Unanimous to all present. To all trustees present. At too much lotus. All right, now we'll move on to 5, which is the community connection. And I would like to introduce Mary Moe, Royce Engstrom, and Kathy Schulte from the Missoula Rotary Club.
Hello. Thank you. My name is Mary Shihimo, and I am here tonight as the coordinator of the In Tune project of Rotary Club of Missoula. With me are past president Royce Engstrom, incoming president Patty Schulte, and just kind of in charge of everything, Kathy Schulte. First, thank you for serving our community as board members. Having done that work, I know that it is sometimes a thankless job, and I very much appreciate your willingness to serve the community. Our Rotary Club has been, like all Rotary clubs, is very interested in service above self. And our particular avenue of service has a lot to do with middle school children. We feel like that is a very important phase of their lives. We, every time we have a Rotary speaker, instead of giving them a little mug or whatever the going thing is, we donate a book to the middle school library. We have a Student of the Month club that encourages students at the middle schools at Porter and at Meadow Hill to recognize students on the basis of character and have their parents come and celebrate them once a month, and we really enjoy doing that. We also are a club that really enjoys music. And we wanted to do something 2 years ago that would make music more accessible to students. One of the things that I noticed when my own kids were playing sports is that I looked out on the basketball court one night and realized there were $2,000 worth of sneakers out there. And musical instruments are also very expensive. So our first In Tune was a year ago, and we used the proceeds from that. We gave them to Monty and to Liddy, who has been a great help to us. And we used that to offset the rentals for musical instruments for middle school students. Last year, some 47 students took advantage of that. In fact, we think we'll be able to continue that program with the money we earned from the first year. The second year, this upcoming year, we asked for grants. We funded the choir camp, the first one that Liddy can remember ever, that was for middle school students that just completed last week. And we were able to give scholarships to 6 students to participate in that. There were a total of about 30 students who participated. We also got a wonderfully written grant, and as a former English teacher, I really appreciate those well-written grants. He just nailed every single criterion. From the orchestra teacher at CS Porter, Mr. Gruber is his name. He was requesting 6 cellos, and if you've ever seen them, they're not the kind of thing that you would be lugging to school as a middle schooler, but they are definitely something that middle school orchestras need. So we are going to do that. And we're also going to set aside a little bit of funding that will help students who their teachers are encouraging to get private lessons to get them right in the school setting. And again, we're hoping that if those are in-need students, that we can provide the funding that will help them to get those private lessons that make such a difference when they enter into the high school setting. So I am very pleased to present you, Superintendent Hill, with our check this year for $10,000. And again, thank you for all you do.
All right, thank you very much. That's so awesome. So now we'll move on to number 6, which is public comment. We have received public comment, written comment, which we have reviewed, and now we'll move on to public comment, which is a portion of the meeting that's set aside for the public to address the board as a body. It is not time for board response or for the public to ask questions. Do not infringe on the right of privacy of others. Please sign in and spell your first and last name. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Their chair or acting chair may interrupt or terminate an individual speaker if the statements are out of order or over 3 minutes, are personally directed to an individual. Any public comment?
We have no public comment requests tonight.
All right, now we'll move on to 7, which is reports and announcements, and I'll turn it over to Superintendent Hill.
I have no news or reports or announcements for the board tonight. I know. It's been kind of quiet. Pat's been well-behaved. And yeah, I know.
Okay, we'll move on to 8, which is the consent agenda. There is no board discussion for consent agenda items, as these are routine items. Is there an elementary motion to approve the consent agenda items, agenda item 1? An elementary trustee, anybody? Moved by trustee Hayes. Is there a second? Moved second by trustee Witcher. No board discussion. Is there any public comment on the consent agenda? All elementary trustees in favor for approving the consent agenda item 1, please indicate yes by raising your hand. Unanimous, all elementary trustees present. This is a full board motion to approve the consent agenda items 2, 3, and 4. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items? Moved by Vice Chair Walker Andrews, second by trustee Wake. There is no board discussion. Is there a public comment on this agenda item? All those in favor for approving the consent agenda items 2, 3, and 4, please indicate yes by raising your hand. Unanimous to all trustees present. And now we'll move on to item 9, which is new business. First up is finance, operation, and maintenance. And first topic is to approve the lease extension for portion of Big Sky High School property. And this is over to Mr. McHugh.
All right, thank you. So this is a piece of property that we've leased to an organization. There's been successor organizations, but they've used a little portion of the property behind the stadium for a cell tower. And that lease began in 1997. I think the original annual lease payment was $3,500. We're recommending an extension, a 1-year extension of that lease, and the lease payment will be around $12,000. A copy of the lease is attached. It's $12,268. They haven't had a tenant, a wireless tenant on that tower for over 5 years. I believe their intent is to remove the tower and restore the site. And so the purpose for the 1-year lease is to accomplish that. And so the recommendation is to approve the lease and then to authorize myself to sign it, myself or Superintendent Hill to sign it. Happy to answer any questions. Oh, I was going to mention that we've collected, I think, just over $120,000 since inception of the lease.
Any trustee questions? Vice Chair Walker Andrews.
Yeah, I was simply wondering the size of this parcel.
Yeah, if you can sort of peel it out of the description that's attached, you'll see it's 30 feet this way, 30 feet that way. I'm sorry, I don't have the exact square footage. Oh, 375. You see it there. Yep.
Any other trustee questions? This is a high school board motion. Is there a motion to approve the recommendation? Moved by trustee Wake, second by Vice Chair Walker Andrews. Any final trustee comments? Any public comment on this agenda item? All those in favor for approving the recommendation, please indicate yes by raising your hand. Unanimous of all trustees present. Now, topic 2 is to approve non-resident enrollments for 2024-2025 school year, and this is over to Superintendent Hill.
We have one student who we are recommending approval for enrollment into MCPS that we're required under the new law for the open enrollment bill passed last year to approve those in board session. Anytime we approve or disapprove enrollment, we have to look at space, availability, all the things that we identified in our integrated strategic action plan. We're saying that we have space for this student. I do know that they're requesting acceptance into, or they're looking to request acceptance into the Teach Academy. It remains to be seen whether or not we would have room, and that's a separate application process, but we're saying yes to this student as of this point.
Any trustee questions? This is an elementary motion. Is there a motion from an elementary trustee to approve the recommendation? Moved by trustee Witcher, second by trustee Hayes. Any final trustee comments? Any public comment? All elementary trustees in favor of approving the recommendations, please indicate yes by raising your hand. Unanimous of all elementary trustees present. Now we move on to topic 3, which is to award the bid for Chief Charlotte Elementary boiler replacement. And this is over to you, Mr. McWilliams.
Yeah, thank you. So this was opened yesterday. We had to get the design done for the new boilers at Chief Charlotte. They were the original boilers from 1995. They served their life, and we opened the bids up yesterday. We had 3 bids, and the lowest responsible bidder was Sentinel Mechanical for $242,293. And we are recommending the board approve that vendor, and we'll be pending a successful negotiation of a contract, and we'll be paying for that with permissive levy building reserve funds.
Any trustee questions? Seeing none, this is the elementary board motion. Is there a motion to approve the recommendation? Moved by trustee Hayes, second by trustee Mercer. Any final trustee comments? Any public comment? All those in favor of approving the recommendation, please indicate yes by raising your hand. Unanimous of all trustees present. Topic 4 is to award the bid for a lifelong learning center sump improvements, and this is back to you, Mr. McWilliams.
Yeah, thank you. Very similar to the Charlotte project. This was designed and bid. The bid was opened yesterday. This will be doing improvements, running all the rain gutters into a sump system so that it creates a better, safer walking area for the students that attend the Lifelong Learning Center. The way it currently exists is a lot of that water runs out of gutters into our parking lot, and there's a lot of ice buildup over the wintertime. We had 4 bids, and the lowest responsible bidder was Specialty Excavating in the amount of $74,860, and the funds will be taken from Lifelong Learning Center on this project.
Any trustee questions? Seeing none, this is a full board motion. Is there a motion to approve the recommendation? Moved by trustee Wake, second by Vice Chair Walker Andrews. Any final trustee comments? Any public comments? All those in favor of approving the recommendation, please indicate yes by raising your hand. Unanimous of all trustees present. Now we're on to topic 5, which is the EPA Community Change Grant, and this is back to you, Mr. Williams.
Thank you, and I'd like to invite Carrie Mueller with Missoula Public Health and Amy Killenberg from Climate Smart Missoula maybe to come up and sit at this table over here if you guys. Thanks, Superintendent Hill. Well, they make their way up there. I'll just do a quick introduction. They reached out to Missoula County Public Schools back this past winter asking if we'd like to participate in this grant from the EPA, which really, in my opinion, and we don't work with a lot of grants necessarily out of facilities, but as much as we should, but this is a $10 to $20 million award with zero match. It's a very big opportunity, and we couldn't be more appreciative of Missoula Public Health and Climate Smart for Missoula for thinking of Missoula Public Schools, and they'll explain that to you here in a minute, but it is for Missoula County Public Schools, sorry. I know it sounds kind of weird, but there's other county schools that will be involved in this. So I will turn it over to Amy and Carrie. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Great, thanks Burley. My name's Carrie Mueller. I'm an air quality specialist with Missoula Public Health.
And I'm Amy Sillenberg with Climate Smart Missoula. And yeah, we're just giving you guys a quick introduction on this exciting opportunity.
Yeah, so we're here to talk about this EPA Inflation Reduction Act Community Change Grant. So what is this EPA Inflation Reduction Act Community Change Grant, or the EPA IRA CCG? I know it's kind of a lot. It's definitely a mouthful. But it's a really cool new funding opportunity that's offered through the EPA's Environmental Climate Justice Program. As Burley mentioned, the grant awards can be up to $20 million, and they're really focused on benefiting disadvantaged communities and neighborhoods around the United States. The projects are supposed to focus on reducing pollution, increasing climate resiliency, and also addressing environmental and climate justice challenges in our neighborhoods. So in Missoula, we have been noticing a few things that climate change has, or we've been noticing a few changes due to climate change, and there's some health risks associated with that. So Missoula Public Health Air Quality Program and Climate Smart Missoula are really keyed into the increased frequency and intensity of wildfires, as well as the fact that we're seeing more extreme heat events from hotter, drier summers. Both of these events from climate change result in compounding health impacts from the wildfire smoke and the extreme heat, and they can impact all of our communities, and especially our disadvantaged communities and vulnerable populations.
Yeah, and just a note there, we have, our summers are hotter and drier, but really our seasons are lasting. Summer season is lasting longer, and that's one of the reasons we have been over the years thinking about schools and kids coming back into school. They're mandated to be there, and they can be very hot. They can have poor air quality from wildfire smoke because of that lengthening season. So it's been top of mind for not just us, but for many folks around the community and teachers and principals, the whole lot there. So, yeah, so we just decided as we heard about this grant and we started chatting about it, and there's so many different things. This isn't a grant that has to be used.
Can I interrupt you for a second just to ask you to turn on your microphone, please?
Oh, I thought I did. Sorry, thank you. Yeah, sorry about that. So it doesn't have to be used for schools, but we recognize the schools in Missoula County as being, really in need of building in that climate resilience that we haven't had potentially in the past. So Missoula's Public Health Air Quality Program with Carrie and us at Climate Smart partnered up with Missoula County Public Schools to apply. And the grant is due, it's not due till November, but it's rolling, so we hope to get it in a little earlier. And the idea is to address wildfire smoke, in particular extreme heat, through school building retrofits. This could be anything from heating and cooling upgrades, new windows, energy efficiency measures. We just have a few things there. Trees and shade on campuses, so it could be in the building or surrounding the building. And again, why schools, as we've learned more, which has been really exciting, touring schools and talking a lot to Burley, you guys know that your schools are hubs that can be climate resilient community spaces. So not just used for kids, but used all throughout the year into the evenings. We've been really impressed by just how much use all these schools receive. And as Carrie mentioned, children are more sensitive and vulnerable to the negative health impacts caused by wildfire smoke and extreme heat. So So we just have, I think, one or two more slides. So for this grant, the eligibility and requirements, they must serve disadvantaged communities and communities with environmental justice concerns. And if you've heard about these types of grants, it's all mapped by the EPA. And so it's not, you don't just look up a school, you have to go to the map and kind of figure it out. But there's parts of Missoula that are in and parts of Missoula that are out. You can serve unincorporated communities that don't have permanent water, sewer services, or acceptable housing. Sealy Lake is one of those, as is Frenchtown, which we recognize is not part of MCPS, but part of our proposed project. So yeah, the schools of interest in this grant proposal, Russell Elementary really rose to the top, Sealy Swan High School and Frenchtown. They're K-5, it's like two schools come together. For various reasons have, they've really risen to the top of needs for a whole bunch of different reasons. And we don't want to bore you guys with all of those details. There's lots of criteria, there's lots of ways to cut and paste and sift through all of this to come up with a really strong eligible project. But those are the top schools of interest. And then I'll tell you a little bit about how the grant and this technical assistance we have received fits into this. So back over the winter, Carrie through Missoula Public Health applied for some technical assistance to put this grant together. The EPA is doing that because so many small communities that really need some funding don't have the capacity to write these really extensive grants. So we won that, so thanks to Carrie. And we're also working with Burley and Shannon Rinkler, who's the grants writer here, to help figure, all this out. But this technical assistance provides expert support to prepare 3 site designs, budget plans, and other materials. So they're doing a lot of the work. We are not restricted to just 3 schools or 3 sites, but that is what the technical assistance offers, and then we can decide to build off of that. But we'll have to see how it all comes together. So in May, this technical assistance team visited Missoula, and again, thanks to Burley and all our pre-work, we landed on 5 schools of interest that we all visited. And then the technical assistance team has really honed in on the 3 schools mentioned: Russell Elementary, Sealy Swan High School, and then the Frenchtown K-5 schools. So we're continuing to work. It's really nice to have these experts that are pulling this information together, are gathering. They're going to actually do the site design with costs, everything. They are coming back to Missoula on July 10th to host 2 community charrettes to educate, engage the community's needs. So yeah, again, we want to share more about this potential grant and hear from the community. That's part of what the technical assistance team is paid to do, is to come help us with that. Do you have flyers?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, we have a couple of flyers we can share with this group. We'll want to we'll get that invitation to you and to others, especially folks that are, anybody that's interested, but especially folks interested in those couple schools here, Sealy and then Russell. The charrette there'll be one up in Sealy. We have a little more information on the July 10th late afternoon, and then we'll be just over at the fairgrounds on the evening, 6:30 to 8. So we have a little more information. So that will hopefully help us build the whole grant proposal with this technical assistance team. And by November, we will submit that and wait and see and have our fingers crossed. Again, it is a really big grant, which is why we're so grateful to have support from folks here, especially working with Burley, but also this technical assistance. They give you the money not just for planning and identifying what you need, but actually to do the work. So we're pretty excited about this opportunity. Have no idea, exactly how. There's not. I think there's maybe up to 150 of these that will be granted across the country, if I have that right. So we'll have to just wait and see, but we will, from this work, everything that the technical assistance team provides for us can be used for other grants or in other ways. So it's basically kind of a gift to us to be able to use however we like after this proposal. So that's all we wanted to share, just to let you folks know that this was happening, and we are, again, having these charrettes, and we'll be putting in this grant proposal. As Burley said, there's no match. It would be funding that if we were to be awarded, we would have to use it pretty quickly in 3 years, which Burley assures us we can do. So kind of a quick turnaround. They want to get the money out. So yeah, we're here for questions if anybody has any, or comments or additions.
This is information only. Is there any questions from a trustee? Vice Chair Walker Andrews?
I realize, of course, that this is emphasizing climate change, but you mentioned things like new windows, et cetera. Is there any ability to make that also a safety? Words to have different windows in our schools might help with the safety concerns that we have as well as climate change.
Yeah, I think in particular the windows that we looked at are at Russell single-paned windows that, I don't know what they'll design. My guess would be that they would be safer. That would kind of end up being kind of a small component of this, but they want to just make the schools work better. It is funded out of an EPA, climate grant, so it's oriented that way, but the criteria is fairly wide open as to what you can propose.
Trustee Witcher?
Currently, Burley, which of our elementaries or which of our schools do not have air conditioning? Is that one of the reasons why Russell was selected?
Well, Russell is one of the schools that does not have air conditioning. I'd have to actually kind of rack my brain a little bit for it. Of course, most of our newer schools do. Some of our schools have portions of their buildings that are air conditioned. I think, Franklin, Charlotte, Lewis and Clark, or Lowell. Lewis and Clark is not air conditioned. Half of Paxton is air conditioned. None of Russell's air conditioned. That's just me kind of talking. I have to go back and think all through them, but Rattlesnake is partially air conditioned.
But that was one of the factors when we're looking at the heat. What were some of the other factors? I'm just interested when you were looking at schools.
Yeah, so we are really focusing on schools being able to handle wildfire smoke and extreme heat. So whether schools are taking in air just from outside and not being able to filter them properly is a big factor. So we would like to see improvements as far as HVAC systems, where they would be able to use MERV 13 or higher filters, which filter out PM 2.5 or wildfire smoke. And then also, as far as extreme heat, we would like to see more schools have that cooling capability because we're seeing longer, hotter summers, and that's really overlapping with the school year now.
Yeah, and so, they asked you to identify the vulnerabilities given climate change, and then what they are interested in funding are things that actually mitigate climate change, so save energy. So it doesn't have to be, every measure doesn't have to actually reduce smoke or filter out the air or, it's not just air conditioning. They want, they can fund HVAC systems that can work more efficiently year-round. Add potentially solar, ground source. And that's where some of those engineered designs that they provide, we may be able to replicate and potentially work in another couple schools. We just have to see what how the budget aligns.
Trustee Mercer?
I think this was like a year ago. My recollection was it was trees between Porter and Reserve that we were doing, and I guess Russell to me is sort of similarly exposed to a major street with no, it's sort of weird in our town that has so many good forestation, and I think as a great urban forester and whatever, that our schools are just taking the full blunt of the sun, and so I guess I just would throw that as a hopefully shade, although they fall on our buildings eventually, and you probably don't like that when that happens.
So you have a heck of a memory, I can tell you that. That grant we were awarded that grant for those trees at Porter. So we'll be working through that, I believe, in the next few months. I meeting with Shannon, who put that grant together. But you're right, after Columbine, there was a big push to reduce vegetation from public schools from that crime prevention through environmental design CPTED program and create unsafe spaces out in the around schools. And of course, that's kind of leveled off, and there's other reasons to incorporate vegetation and trees around your building now, one of them being the heat factor and adding shade. I mean, you look at Russell off that east side, you just add some trees off to that east side, and you can, that's really the hottest part of the building, that hottest wing faces to the south. And you put some trees in there, and it'll probably reduce the temperatures in that classroom quite a bit. So yeah, there's definitely some wins there.
Yeah, and kind of adding to that, a really cool thing about the technical assistance that we received are the experts that we're working with. Some of them are landscape architects and engineers, and they were walking around Russell and just really excited about the opportunities to add shade and add trees, and there can just be multiple benefits for what this grant can provide. Adding more trees to the campus can help with mental health and also with shade, and so some of these things will have dual benefits.
Any other trustee questions? All right, thank you very much. I am excited for this grant, especially for those Russell Bears. And I think Peter will be excited as well with this. So I just want to thank you again for your presentation.
Yeah, thanks so much, and we'll pass out some information and share about the July 10th event. If anybody's able to come join us, it would be great to get some input and talk more about some of these ideas. But hopefully we'll be back with a full proposal and maybe even some money.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Any public comment on this agenda item? Seeing none. So now we'll move on to item 10, which is the Board of Trustees, the Montana School Board Association resolutions, and this is over to Vice Chair Walker Andrews.
Okay, we're not voting on these tonight. We won't vote on them until the July meeting. I'm not going to be here for the July meeting, so good time to talk about it a little bit. So there are a number of items. The first sort of set is the confirmation of the of the Montana School Boards Association's principles, guidelines, and things of that sort, their vision, the gap analysis that they do. And so what I want to say is that Tracy put here a link to the annual meeting booklet, which you can get online, and she also put the page numbers where the changes occur. So I think people will want to look at that. Basically, it's just updating some of the things that the Montana School Boards Association does. So for example, under the gap analysis, what they do is they consider sort of the difference between what the state is providing and what the Montana Constitution says should be provided for education. And so as an update, they're saying, well, we want to make sure that we advocate for preservation of the 95 mills, which, as you know, this year was a problem. They would like to advocate removing the 3% inflation cap for school funding because it hasn't done its job. They want to also change that inflation cap in a way that makes more sense by using something like employee costs rather than the CPI as the way that you measure inflation. They also want to advocate for increasing the share of special ed that's picked up by the state instead of local taxpayers. So these are items that they've identified that were voted on by people to bring to the boards all across Montana to say, do you agree that we should focus some of our efforts on these new things, okay? And so again, you should look at the ones that are mentioned on this page and the page numbers in the actual annual meeting booklet. In terms of the dues, what they're asking people to do is accept a new estimate, because what the Montana School Boards Association decided to do, given that school boards are all hurting, was to reduce the amount of the increase that there would have been, so to hold it steady. They also have made some modifications to the strategies for advocating. Again, it's just saying, yes, we think that these are good ideas as a way to address the legislature into making changes. The two nominations that we're being asked to approve are for Crystal Zentner to be the president-elect. She is a director and a Bridger trustee, and she's also the library director in Bridger. And she was nominated by the board of directors. And then to nominate Rick Cummings as the vice president. I was sort of amazed. He's been on a school board since 2002 in Cascade, and he still smiles all the time. He's a local farmer, rancher in the area, and funny guy anyway. I enjoy being with him. And then finally, the last thing that they're asking us to weigh in on is a conceptual approach for modifying the school funding formula. Okay, as you all know, we depend mostly on A and B, right? And what they want to do, and this may sound odd to you, but what they're suggesting doing is decreasing the amount of A and B, okay? So instead of it being something like, I had written the numbers down, but of course now I can't find it, but reducing the amount for the elementary students and the amount for high school students, but also reduce the proportion of the funding formula that comes from A and B. Now, why would you do that? Well, we lost, 300 or 400 students over the last number of years. And as you well know, those students don't just all come out of one fifth grade class somewhere so that you don't need as many teachers. So it's a way of saying, we don't want everything to hang on the number of students, so let's reduce the amount per student and the proportion in the formula that goes for that. And instead, to increase the quality educator payment. So for every certified, licensed teacher, administrator, et cetera, there's a payment that comes to the schools, and to raise that payment. So if you still need, those fifth grade teachers because you didn't lose all the kids in the fifth grade, you're getting more money added to your budget for the personnel that you have and need. And that's why I'm saying you really should look at this. They want to modify the basic entitlement by increasing the overall amount and decreasing the enrollment requirements. So instead of saying you have to have 800, it's sort of you have to have 400. Instead of having 400, you only need 200 to get those particular things. They want to ask.
Are we in support of what she just said as a district?
Well, I think that we have to think about that and talk about it, yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the items too is that when we think about this too, is that we should really, because MTSBA is for school board, but it's not for superintendents. So we should really visit with our superintendent in terms of.
And also.
And our clerk.
So I'm just going to finish these, and then we need to open it up a little for questions, but then you all should spend some time looking at it. They want to ask to have special education funding increased, the part that the state puts in 40% to 40%. I'm sorry, what? From 40 to 60? Okay, I said it wrong. They want to allow districts to adopt a general funds budget that is at least equal to the base budget, and then not to have to go out and have the community vote on that, which is one of our problems. They give us 80% and we have to scrounge for the other 20%. And as I said, they want to remove the 3% inflationary cap, use employment costs, and make it equal to what that is, okay? So that you're not always under, or, the actual employment costs. Then they're saying that they would like as well, although they're not sure they can do it now, but to certainly have in the list of possibilities things like cost of living adjustments, So Missoula is a much more expensive place to live than, say, Webo, but that isn't how the money's divided up, and certainly Pat can talk to that, because we've talked about how the equalization formula really killed places like Missoula this time. And then funding for facilities and maintenance of all the school buildings across the state. Now, the estimate is, by making these changes, and this is where Pat and Micah certainly come in, is that it would be an increase of $141.9 million across the state if they make these changes. So that's the proposal. Again, we have till the end of July to say, yeah, we like the idea or we don't. We're not being asked to say, these are absolutely the things we want, but rather we are willing for you and hope that you can move forward on these and continue to negotiate and come up with the best, outcome on this committee that's supposed to be considering changing the funding formula. I do know that, and Micah can tell you better, but I do know that Rob Watson is on the committee that Lance is working with, as are many of the other, quote, constitutional players, as they put it, in these discussions. And the hope is to get something done this year rather than letting the state put it off until the I don't even know how to say it, decennial discussions a year out, but to start doing stuff now to make a difference. So I hope other people have things to say.
Yeah, and this is information only, so are there any questions or comments from a trustee? Or anybody? Trustee Mercer?
Sorry, ignorant questions. When you say committee, do you mean a legislative committee or a committee of this organization?
No, it's a legislative committee. It's the interim something committee. Yeah.
Which is to say that, who knows what happens, but there's at least some traction here in the sense that the legislature did pass an interim committee to look at it. This isn't just them speculating. Okay. And then is there a prioritization, or is this just the whole packet where you yay, nay the whole packet, or do they want any sort of ranking or anything?
Well, I think not problem, but that one of the issues is, for example, the A and B and the quality educator payment would absolutely have to go together, because you don't want to say, oh, sure, reduce A and B, oh, and you're not going to do anything over here. So I think it's sort of general approval. As I said before, this committee has, I think, two people from the legislature, Jones and Beatty. It has someone from the Office of Public Instruction, someone from Montana School Boards Association, Rob from the school administrators, maybe some additional, I think Connie Keogh may be on it, some additional legislators. And I think they just want, what MTSBA wants from us is, we sort of agree with your marching plan here. We realize you've got to deal with all kinds of other people who may say, no, that's ridiculous. But they've been working on it. And again, probably Micah, you know more than I, because I think you just talked to a bunch of school administrators about it.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here, and MTSBA has been putting out information and spreadsheets. One of the goals in all of this is to reduce local property taxpayer investment in education, putting it more to the state as a whole as opposed to going back. And so what they put together is basically a formula that reduces the mills locally for almost every district in Montana. There's a few that they would go up, excuse me, but that's just because of how the current equalization formula works. And so it's really a shift of, and I don't know what the proportion is, but we'll just say that 80% of our funding comes from the A and B formula, the A and B side of the formula, and 20% comes from the quality educator payment. They essentially want to shift that, because I might lose 2 students out of a 5th grade classroom, so I go from 30 to 28. Well, I lost the revenue for those 2 students, but I still have to pay the teacher. like the teacher still, like even if I went down to 16 students, I still have to pay the teacher. If I lost 2 students, I'm in a small school. It creates a kind of an inequity and an imbalance in how we fund school. So I think generally, and Pat and I have talked a little bit about this, is it's hard to look at it and say we don't support it. It would represent about a 13% increase in funding for Missoula County Public Schools. And for most districts across the state, it varies somewhere in there. But we still have concerns that MTSBA represents all school boards across Montana. So whether it's a 3-person school board in Willow Creek or an 11-person board in Missoula, they have to represent their entire constituency. And so there's times when it feels like, especially if you're in Western Montana, you're in a large AA district or a district with a high cost of living, that your needs are still not being addressed by this, because again, it's an equalization formula across the entire state. And not specific to basically what our needs are. So it would be hard to say no. And what they're right now, all they're really asking for is permission to continue to advance the idea. There's draft legislation. It's a 10-page bill that basically rewrites all of the things that they were talking about from a funding formula standpoint. So at face value, you're going to hear us say, yep, this makes sense. We believe it's good. It would be really nice to get to a place where we aren't having to go out to our voters all the time to ask for levies and different increases. We have concerns as this kind of unfolds, and you have to have a starting off place. What would happen to the levies that are already in existence? Do we lose those? Do they get folded in? We have a technology levy. We now have a safety levy on the elementary side. What happens with all of those things? And then ultimately it becomes part of the legislative process. And so there can be a lot of trading for different things, like, yep, we'll give you this, but we're going to pull back your ability to permissibly levy for adult ed, or we're going to pull back your ability to permissibly levy for tuition, or we don't know where it's all going to shake out. So it's definitely work. Lance, Melton, executive director for MTSBA, very skilled, very versed in legislative processes and understanding what it is, and knowing that you kind of have to go in this with a package. It's kind of a package deal, and you got to see where you land and where maybe some of those trade-offs are. So, yeah.
To speak to that, I was going to say Lance has also said, and for exactly the reasons I think you mentioned, you don't want to have so many moving parts that they really can start yanking things out too. You want to have the bulk of it be these sort of big, simpler pieces, because otherwise some legislator comes in with their pet peeve and messes everything up.
Any other questions or comments?
When I looked at the document, I focused on pages 41 and 42, which what their intent was to resolve the following preliminary list of gaps between the promises of quality in Article 10 of the Montana Constitution and the current realities set forth in the law. So they looked at various areas like inflation, the state share of excess costs. They also looked at sort of this awareness of other gaps within quality education, some of which they identified were activities in athletics as part of the funding formula, nursing and health services, school lunches, and then what I thought was good when we sort of talk about the cost of living adjustment, and what Micah was talking about is that, in a broad sense, the cost increases associated with inflationary factors that address the following, and so the needs of urban schools with high population and the ability of school districts to attract and retain quality educators and other personnel. And I look at those two, there's 4 components listed, but really sort of areas where you can address cost of living, high density, high cost, and also how do you attract and retain without having the revenue to allow staff to live in certain communities. So I think they're really broad, and you, as Micah said, you just don't know until it sort of gets washed out, but you can't hardly argue with the advocacy pieces, and I thought the 41 and 42 were kind of good summaries of those sort of overarching efforts to bridge the gap, I guess was what I'd say.
If you go to the online document that he's talking about, everything that's new is highlighted, so you can find out pretty quickly what the proposals are, but.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, any public comment? Seeing none, it is 6:51 and we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.